is this a plateau? Would anybody say, and I don't have my chat open, so Brad, you can help me out with that. Is this a plateau? What are the comments coming in? Does somebody consider this a plateau?
No, no, no. But I think it's because they see the red line going down. But Casey, what about that spot in June where it's the same for a few days? What about that spot over there in July that's a few days? What about the little bit of up and down?
Yeah.
Someone
And I
might
would
call
say,
those days a plateau.
think about the emotional discussion that happens when we're here. Okay. And what kind of things could start the trajectory going back up the other direction if we're not careful and stop, challenge, and choose at that point and redirect ourselves and pay attention to what the end goal really is so that we can get back into the swing of things. Now, sometimes this is something that's happening that's, out of our control a little bit, but most things, almost like 99.9% of the things, are going to be completely in our control once we figure out what it is that we want to do with
Wait,
it.
Casey, say that again because it's so good. Like, how many people might turn that little bit they're not understanding into a few more days in and thinking we're not in control? Say that again about how we are in control when you know, because I've been there too, where I'm like, man, the scale hasn't moved for a few days. All right, well, I guess I will just, it's not working. Oh, the mental thing. And then it's like you just continue, you actually, instead of being like, oh, I know what's going on and being able to stay the course, you start actually going more off course. So it just becomes that ramping effect. When
Yep.
you know, and you know how to stay the course, which when you go, when you get, when I learned this stuff that you're going over tonight, it was like so much freedom because I understood what was going on. I didn't have to go through the mental gym of like, oh, now I understand why. Cause it all makes sense with our program. So
When
it's
you can put it in the conscious state and then make some decisions based on that cognitive thinking, slows everything down. And you can say, when you get on the scale, the first things that come out should be like, oh, that's interesting. And then you should self-reflect on all the things that could possibly create that scenario, and then see if they're true or if they're untrue. And a lot of times you're going to find that it's just an anomaly. And we're going to talk about what those are. So 2 to 3 weeks of completely no results whatsoever. And I think this is important to discuss because if we just go 5 days on really solid and lose, and then we let loose a little bit and we gain, and then we get strict again and we lose, that's not a plateau. You have movements going in both directions. You have things going that's actually working away from your goal, but then you make the correction and you're moving down. So technically that's not a plateau. If you were to average it out, it would look like a plateau on average, but what's really happening is you at any point can make a decision to keep going in that direction of success and keep that progress happening. So ups and downs, like we're talking like you are doing everything as good as you possibly can and you're plateaued. Okay. And at that point, we have to dive deeper and we have to take a look at a few things. And then we'll get the answers a little bit later. Okay. So this is where we're going to go with this. Okay. So number one, obviously, Habits of Health was put together, 5-in-1, the optimal health weight plan was put together to be so simple that you don't need any other additional tools in order for it to be successful. Okay. And that is the truth. If you were to just follow to the letter the 5-in-1 plan in the guide that comes with your first box and that you can get on Optavia Client Answers on PDF, attach it to your phone, probably get it sent to you by your coach, all the things. This is what it looks like. Okay. It's 800 to 1,000 calories. It's 80 to 100 grams of carbohydrates. It's at least 72 grams of protein, but it really comes out to about 105 when you choose the leanest proteins. And then it's going to be less than 30% of calories coming from fat, which is about 25 to 30 grams of fat. Okay, so if you're following that structure with the food items that are suggested in the program guide, you're already good. Like you are there, and that is your first sticky point where you can say this variable is locked in, loaded, and fixed, and I don't have anything to worry about with that. Okay, that's now what we do know is we do recognize that there's a number of people who already use like apps to track their food because it's super easy, it's super convenient. And if this is not you because it's overwhelming, then stick with the guide. If this is you because you like gadgets and you like apps, I would encourage you to track all of your items, including your fuelings, which you can scan in. It's super, super easy, even on the free version. And at the end of the day, when you look at your macros, it's going to say 800 to 1,000 calories, 80 to 100 grams, and you get to choose. You'll obviously choose, but there is a range there. But I would say 85 grams or less of carbohydrates. I'd say about 105 grams of protein and 25 to 30 grams of fat. If you have that in your MyFitnessPal every single day, you're going to be like, cool, I'm locked into my guide, essentially. If you do it and you see a 1,300 calorie day or a 1,500 calorie day, and you didn't realize that that's what it was, it's probably a serving size that's out of whack. Like maybe you didn't know it wasn't 8 or 9 cashews, it was like 18 to 19 cashews. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this wrong for this long, right? And we can pinpoint that discrepancy and we can make a correction immediately, and you're going to start to see success again.
So Casey, quick thing on that one, actually, Chris, would you bring up the poll? I just want to know, like, how many people successfully busted through a plateau? Yes, 64%, no, 36. And what I saw in the chat, I'd be kind of confused by that answer, by the poll, if I didn't look at the chat where a lot of people said, I've never hit a true plateau, which I think is awesome. And a lot of people capitalize true because they've learned the stuff we're talking about here. And I want to address some of the questions in the chat here. And what you said, Casey, because you said to me one time is you'll either hit your goal and you'll see results or you'll know why. Like, that's interesting. Yes. So you can either option one, go back and like dial them in. Or if you're kind of nerdy like me, at one point I did this with my journey. MyFitnessPal app is a great generic one. A lot of the Optavia meals are preloaded. It's like super easy. God help me if I had to like enter in like every measurement of everything. But it was super interesting one time to do that because it's like, when I really wasn't measuring that mayonnaise for my lean and green. Interesting how that like added up, or the ranch, like it goes up pretty quickly, and it's a way to give you a lot of clarity, like, 300 calories happened like that. And I thought I was doing great.
And here's another thing that happens. We've seen this all the time where people will track it and they will be drastically under in calories because they underate their lean and green out of either not understanding the measurements or because they just like thought a portion of chicken, if they choose a frozen chicken breast, might only be about 3 ounces. So if they're getting 5 or 6 ounces of chicken breast, they're in half. They're drastically cut in half is what they should have been able to do. And then what happens is that trickles over time, and then you're going to have to pay the piper at some time. So instead of being at your 1,000 calories, now you accidentally were at 600 or 700 because you goofed it up. And now you're ravishly hungry because you can't figure out what's going on, but it's because you underfed yourself on what was available to you. So the other cool thing about that is when you have calories remaining in the evening time, how nice is it to go to bed at night knowing that you hit your goal and you're going to be on track to accomplish your goals? So many people make that, like, they go, man, it's like right before bed, should I eat those last 200 calories? It's like, if they fit into your scheduled plan, you get them, because your body works on a sequence of time, 72 hours. We've got our 24-hour rhythm, we have our 72 or 48. And then obviously we have, a weekly type of pattern. So it's going to all average out. But if we miss some of those things, it's going to come back a little bit later and we're going to wonder. And we're always going to use that day as like, what did I do today that I screwed up? And you didn't do anything that day. It might have been 2 days ago that is causing that ripple effect now.
And Casey, I know we have a lot of stuff to get to tonight. One thing I would say, because I saw people saying they're like, oh man, like I really don't want to measure all those things or do it. When I'm like refreshing my health, like, because guys, health is a journey like this. Like, there's going to be dialing it back in. There's going to be all that stuff. And when I really am getting back, to really taking it to the next level, I'll log it for like 2 or 3 days. That's all I need to get that like clarity. And then after that, it's like, okay, I needed that current reality. I personally don't find it helpful to keep going. I just needed that current reality check. So if you're one of those people like, it doesn't really help me to log all the time, do it for just 2 or 3 days to just get a baseline, and you'll be so eye open to what's going on.
Yep. Once you measure out everything and you put it in your like normal dish that you would have something in, like, so I know exactly what 28 grams looks like in my bowl of whatever, right? Whether it's whatever it is, right? So I might not ever have to do that again because we're learning these portion sizes. And when we get in later on into the life book, where we start talking about portion plate, we start talking about the 9-inch plate, you'll be able to visualize what a portion of all of the foods is that you're having right now, because you've already become familiar with it. So we're just retraining what it looks like to have these portions. And you might find just a couple of different things that are like, oh shoot, like I realize now that what I thought was a tablespoon of peanut butter was like a heaping tablespoon of peanut butter, which can be almost double the calories. And it sounds nitpicky. And again, it's like, you know what I don't want to do? And my wife knows this. I don't want to balance my checking book, my checking account. I don't want to balance our banking account. Like, I don't want to, but if I want to know what's coming in and going out and what's available and avoiding overdrafts and whatever else, right? It's like you kind of need to know. So if it's important, then you will track it, right?
You're saying if I don't write it down, like I thought the rule was if I didn't write it down, it didn't count and I could just do it. You mean
Right.
that it actually adds up?
Exactly. And the other thing that I say often is the level of detail is going to be dictated by either your level of dissatisfaction or frustration or the need to accomplish a goal on a specific date. So if you're kind of just 1% better every day or one step closer to optimal health every single day, which is what we're all about, is one incremental step at a time, right? But we want to make sure that we're practicing perfect, not just practice. The practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? So, and there's always the emotional stuff that you're just going to have days that we have to do the bare minimums, like Dr. Anderson talks about, your one push-up a day, whatever the case is, right? So this is I want to get into the BMR here because this is a really critical thing that I think a lot of people kind of miss, okay? This is when your starting plan, you have your BMR, which is directly associated to your weight. So when you get started, this person right here, say 200 pounds, and for math's sake, we're just going 10 times, which is the BMR. So they're going to be in 1,000 calorie deficit by following program. They're going to lose 2 pounds, about 2.1 pounds a week. As this person loses weight, they lose some of the ability to burn body fat. Because imagine you're taking a 30-pound backpack that you just threw off to the side. Is it that much harder to work without a 30-pound bag? Yes, your body's burning fewer calories by not carrying that extra weight around. The challenge with that is that your ability to burn those calories is also decreased because now you're a smaller person. So as you get smaller, then you are actually burning fewer calories. Now, some people will start to say, I've plateaued out or I'm slowing down, my weight loss has stalled, what's going on? Usually about this time, we feel pretty awesome that we saw this much weight loss already. We start to add a few things to our coffee. We start to have a couple of handfuls of this, that, and the other thing. And before we know it, we are kind of in a plateau, right? Habits of Health already has the solution to all of this, okay? But this is a really common thing. This is also one thing that I hear all the time when somebody says, when I started a program, I was losing 2 pounds a week. And then they started living in this body over here, this 20% body. And let's say they go on a cruise or something, they come back, they decide they want to go on 5 and 1 to just tighten up again. And they're like, I'm only losing 0.8 pounds. When I first did it, I was losing 2. Well, you're a different body now, right? You're a different body. So you can't expect to lose the same the first time you were on program, maybe at 300 pounds with a 3,000 calorie BMR versus now at 150. So that you have to grab onto that because that's an incredible important thing to understand, which leads us into one of these studies that I always talk about, which is the average person is always going to underreport how much food they eat, and they're going to overestimate how much they work or how much they work out or how much movement they do. But we're going to move quickly past this. Okay, so again, that national study actually confirmed this, that 1 out of 10 people know how many calories they actually need to maintain or lose weight. Okay, now we have a really simple program that we can just call it 5 and 1. In my mind, that is 800 to 1,000 calories, 85 grams or less of carbohydrates, all the math, right? But for everybody else, it's kind of just the magical program. We don't know what that means exactly. It's just the magical program. But here are the actuals, right? So here's your 5 and 1, 800 to 1,000, 80 to 100 grams of carbs. Here's your 4 and 2. And your 4 and 2, as you can see, is 1,100 to 1,300 calories and 85 to 100 grams of carbs. So there's just a little bit of differences there, but that's really important to kind of know, because if you do your tracking and you're not hitting those numbers, you're not doing that program. You're doing something else, okay? And that's going to explain why there might be some frustration there. Okay, so here's the solution to what we had just talked about. As you are dropping in weight and your BMR is decreasing, Dr. Anderson has a solution. It's in the Habits of Health. It's in the Life book. Is you're going to start increasing your NEAT activity. Has anybody heard of that before? Yes, we have, the NEAT activity. So now you're doing the 6 S's, right? So you're doing the Samba, you're doing all the things that just keeping you active throughout the day. You're fidgeting more, you're energetic because you are feeling great. You're standing, somebody just said, you're burning an additional 200 to 300 calories, which makes up the difference of losing the 20 to 30 pounds that you've already lost. Okay, so problem solved, no plateau because you increased your NEAT. You are now continuing to stay at that same rate of weight loss on that weekly rate of weight loss. Okay, then guess what happens? Level 1, we go to actual eat walking. And then level 2, we go to eat resistance. Level 3, we go to HIIT training. And then there's 6 options to boost your eat resistance. And if you go through those 6 steps, is basically every program any personal trainer would ever be able to write out is going to be able to be synced to those 6 options to boost your eat resistance. It's all right there. Okay, so it's fascinating that like many of us haven't picked that up yet, but this fixes any possibility of plateau and is going to create an environment for long-term health and longevity and all the things that we're really shooting for. So, so keeping track. Okay, so really what you want to do is you do want to keep an eye on how you're feeling, because feeling great is the most important priority, because you want to feel great while you're doing all of this. So track how you're feeling before your workout, after your workout, what keeps you motivated. And this means that if you start to plateau, you'll be able to you'll better be able to get yourself out of it and keep moving forward. Make sure you're also using the book. So what does that mean? You want to be tracking your information. Okay. So here's an example of tracking your steps. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we do shoot for 10,000 steps a day. Have you guys heard that? Yes. Yeah, sorry about the last slide. I kind of rambled through it a little bit. I apologize for that. But the 10,000 steps right here, guys, this is what we're kind of shooting for, but this is me. So you can see here that there's days when I'm doing Zooms, I'm meeting with clients, I'm maybe driving or traveling, where my steps are not that awesome. Okay, and then I have days where my steps are, I'm teaching classes, I'm taking classes, I might be at the health clubs, visiting with members, doing all this stuff, and my steps are pretty darn high. Okay, on average, I'm probably 10,000, but that's not what we're talking about. But what I wanted to just show you is that by tracking, I know where I'm at for my activity. And if you have an Apple Watch or something like that, it will even tell you get up and stand, start moving around, that kind of thing. Okay, how else do we know if we're on track? Well, if we are tracking, we're going to stay consistent in our calories, and we're going to stay in this calorie deficit if our goal is to either stay losing body fat or to see weight loss. I set my goal, this is based, now I'm in an optimization, so I set my goal for 2380. I respond best to 19 to 2100 calories. So as you can see, I give myself a little bit of freedom because I don't want a ceiling that I feel like I'm fighting over. So I set my calorie limit to where, 2380, and then I'm going to achieve just below that with an occasional day of around 20, that's a little bit higher. Okay, but the consistency is here. So that's really an important thing to keep in mind, because if any of these start going off kilter, we can say, okay, let's make these adjustments. Okay, so now let's kind of put this all together here. So here you are with your BMR and your NEAT activity. So every day, for example, and this is condensed timeline, but this whatever amount of time this is for you to be in phase 1, you're at your 950 calories, your BMR and NEAT, you're losing 2 pounds a week. And then either your BMR has dropped, but you increased your eat walking and you maintained your same 5-in-1 program. So now you're still at that 2 pounds of body fat loss a week. And then we might add eat resistance. And maybe here's where we start to make an adjustment to maybe 4 into slightly more calories. You can see this is increasing. And then maybe now I'm at my goal, which is the whole idea, right? The whole idea is to get to our goal, quite honestly, as quickly as we possibly can so that we can live in this like sweet spot. Okay, so now if my goal is to like literally burn 2,300 calories a day and consume 2,300 calories a day, I'm actually in what some people would call a plateau, but we can also call it maintenance. Okay. Now, if I want to gain muscle, I'm going to be in a higher caloric amount. If I have more activities, I can eat according to my activities. This is a perfect scenario. Now, the reason I even brought in the bodybuilding picture in the beginning was because if I was on a structured plan, like a robot or something where I was doing it specifically for outcome and not for life, then I would be on something very similar to this, where I would be increasing my calorie expenditure while decreasing my calories and continuing that process losing about 1% a week until I got to my goal body fat percentage. Okay. But that's going to be a structured plan, and it's going to be but that's easy for beginners. And the reason I say that is because this is where I'm at now. Okay. Where I'm at now is the yellow is the activities, and the blue on days that I tracked, and there's a couple of times down here where you can see where I didn't track. You can see I'm in a constant calorie deficit. So I'm in a spot where I'm not going to be gaining body fat, but I am on a couple of these high days. You can see that I touched the same level of calories that I burned for the day. But on the course of a couple of weeks or a month, I'm still going to see body fat reduction during this time. The reason I bring this up is that this is not just 10,000 steps a day. This is, some days are resistance training. Some days are HIIT classes, 60-minute HIIT classes. Some are 5K runs. Some are busier days at work. But the point is this is me doing me. This is me doing life. This is me enjoying my activities and my hobbies. And this is where you will be eventually, because you'll be able to control your outcome of calories in and calories out, and literally dial in to wherever you want to be and whatever you want to look like, okay, and feel like, okay? So I know it's a lot of data. I know it's a lot of information.
Yeah, Casey, like I know you have a little bit here at the end, but I think we're at the top of the 30 minutes here, and people are just begging for more. And
we really are,
yes. And I know your heart, Casey, is that you just want to help people realize that although it's not easy, it is actually simpler than we think, so we can get out of our mind. And I know you kind of wanted to bring it home on this slide. We'll have more on this. And by the way, for everyone that's watching, what I think is cool about Casey and I hosting tonight is he had 30 years of experience in this before me. I had no experience before I started. But what's cool is as he's going over this information, it'll start to make sense at every level as you keep taking the steps. So if you got just the fact tonight that's like, hey, dial it in a little bit more. There's less things, like there's less details that you don't know. And you just, I don't know, if you got some clarity tonight, drop a 10 in the chat, because really also it comes down to, because Casey, sometimes we're in a chosen plateau. There's been times where I am not exactly dialed in, but is it worth throwing my health journey away because I can't be perfect? Is that not a win? Is it not a win to make healthier decisions? Is it not a win to feel yourself better? Either you'll hit your goal, like you said, Casey, you'll either hit your goal or you'll know why it's not going like as fast as it could be. But either way, you know. And I just think that's a great clarity piece right here to end up on this one right here.
100%.